Hi, everybody. So I'm going to run my little intro and then we're going to get started.
Your falling face first in the ground. Don't want a thing, but I see you. A faded place, a love I found. How you
Hi. Hopefully, you guys can hear me okay. I live in a cabin in the woods and some of my house is falling apart, so you guys might hear some knocking or sawing in the background. I apologize, but I'm also not going to delay me starting this series. So, I have a little PowerPoint, and I want to preface this by stating I am not here to give a full uh, history of Mr. Lewis Joyland Jolly West. I am specifically here, as I stated the other night, because there has been a massive PR campaign, I would argue, about how Jolly was not a monster or a psychopath or uh, did it did things that were immoral. And I try not to be ungracious with people. I really, really do. But after my last stream, I woke up before I went to work, and lo and behold, there was another interview with the exact same individual talking about Jolly and how great he was. So, what I've decided to do is I'm going to pick little topics that this individual likes to focus on as the redeeming qualities of Jolly, and we'll just kind of go through some of them. Some of them you may be aware of, some of them you may not. And I know that probably for my Twitter people who follow my research and some of my Instagram folks, you're like, why do you feel the need to come on and talk about Jolly West and counter this narrative? Um, because it's important, because I care about the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, and eventually, maybe I'll do it at the end of this stream. I don't really know because I'm kind of over it. Um, Maybe at the end of this stream, I'll just list a couple of the names that this individual uh, has said himself he received great support from before his claim to fame. And I have a big problem with the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, and I have no problem saying that. So, Dr. Jolly West, sinister or saint? We're going to find out. I mean, I already have my opinion, but I guess that kind of makes me a jerk. So, let me pull this up. Now, I do want to give a little bit of context because history matters, right? So, I'm not going to sit here and talk about the history of the CIA or Alan Dulles or anything like that, but we need to have some context and a decent grasp of history. We do not bring democracy to the world. That's just what the intelligence community says that we do. So I'm just going to put that out there up front. You guys will see in a second. Okay. Let me see if I can get this PowerPoint going. Hopefully, you guys like it. There we go. Okay. Let's see if this works. Okay. Hopefully, you guys can see this. So, Dr. Jolly West, sinister or a saint? I hope you guys like my thumbnail. I got a pretty good kick out of it. So, all right. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think that many of us have heard of this saying before. Do you know someone's intentions or not? I'm not saying that I do, but sometimes good intent doesn't really matter, right? What's the results? So, this here is a little clip from the Summary of Remarks by Mr. Alan Dulles at the National Alumni Conference of the Graduate Council of Princeton University and this was in 1953. I would like you to pay attention to that date because I'm just going to show a little curious thing in the next slide. So, Mr. Alan Dulles, in the past few years, we have become accustomed to hearing much about the battle for men's minds, the war of ideologies, and indeed, our government has been driven by the international tension we call the quote unquote Cold War to take positive steps to recognize psychological warfare and to play an active role in it. I wonder, however, whether we clearly perceive the full magnitude of the problem, whether we realize how sinister the battle for men's minds has become in Soviet hands. We might call it, in its new form, brain warfare. Yeah, I'm sure you did think that, Alan Dulles. All right, so over here on the left, I love the newspaper archives, guys. They're so much fun. And when you type in someone's name, see that highlight on the left? It'll keep it highlighted for you, which makes it very easy. So, OU psychiatry head selected. Dr. Louis Joyland Jolly West, 30 years old, an Air Force major, was named as the first full-time head of the Department of Psychiatry and Neurology at the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine. We're going to come back to that in just a second. Over here, you guys are going to see on the right, Science for the People. This is a publication, I believe it was published through LaRouche, which that's a completely different discussion, but it doesn't matter because this publication is very important to this topic specifically. And I just kind of liked the picture because I think it's quite appropriate. So, when you look on Wikipedia at Mr. Jolly West, it notes the following year, exactly 1 year after Alan Dulles made his statement about brain warfare, in 1954 at the age of 29 and with no previous post-residency fellowship or tenure track appointment, Jolly West became a full professor and chair of psychiatry at the University of Oklahoma College of Medicine. Does that really matter? I don't know. Maybe. I just think that it's curious. Let me stop sharing this for 1 second and get you guys back up over here with me. Okay, so I gotta kind of tell you guys why I'm gonna do this way. This individual has stated that evidence must be proven that Jolly West was involved in X, Y, or Z. Jolly West is being hailed as a civil rights activist and someone who spent his life in servitude to help others. And it is often referenced that he did not collect money, refused to take money. Such a philanthropist. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not trying to be petty, but I just don't appreciate when people with really large platforms are blatantly dishonest with their crowd, especially when they're claiming to help people that have left a cult. And this is what they have made their career out of. I'm kind of going gloves off because I'm really frustrated with the whole thing. But I guess that's neither here nor there, right? So I want to get back to the PowerPoint. I'm going to figure this out, guys. I'm going to get good at it, I promise. And where are we at? Oh, Jolly. How did you come into my life like this? Okay, so here we go. Yeah, this is good. Okay. So, Jolly, like I said, has been hailed as a civil rights activist in the PR campaign that's been going on for roughly the past week, specifically his work with Martin Luther King. Something that is not brought up that I find very interesting, and there are multiple books out there that reference this, but this individual who demands evidence only seems to focus on one book and one topic about Jolly, specifically Haight Ashbury, Manson, The Process. Doesn't say The Process Church of the Final Judgment. I don't know why. I have my thoughts, but here we go. Okay. All right, so let's get to the next slide. So, from that article that you guys saw on the earlier slide, the picture with the little brain wires. So, Violence Center, Psychotechnology for Repression, a multi-million-dollar proposal for a quote-unquote Center for the Study and Reduction of Violence, or CSRV, at the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute, or NPI, has been designed to focus on the pathologically violent individual and, in the words of its main proponent, is aimed at altering undesirable behavior. In this time of psychosurgery, remote controlled electrical stimulation of the brain, chemotherapies, and prison quote unquote behavior modification programs, there is real danger that mind control practices are replacing less sophisticated physical approaches to enforce conformity or repression. In this context, violence centers like the one at UCLA serve to give scientific legitimacy to such forms of repression. So, this is Mr. Jolly West. This center that he was proposing got a lot of backlash and ended up being completely kiboshed. Wasn't very, what would they call it these days? Inclusive? Some might call it racist. And here's a nice article where in 1972 there were massive debates because people thought that Dr. West was not being honest about the reasoning behind this. I don't know if you guys can see this. I don't want to sit here and read news clippings. I feel like that would be rather boring. If you guys would like me to next time, I have no problem doing that. Now I am going to read one part. Okay. They were proposing to perform psychosurgery on a number of prison inmates who displayed quote unquote aggressive and quote unquote violent behavior. Preliminary arrangements were made to perform the surgery until the plans were leaked to the press. Imagine that. Jolly. And here's the rest of the article. I'm sorry, this isn't another one. Now, have you ever heard the saying, "The lady doth protest too much"? Okay. So, right here. West flatly refuted the assertion that the center planned to perform psychosurgery on experimental subjects. It was never our intent to do any kind of surgery in these studies to plant electrodes in anybody's head. Now, when an audience member charged that plans for brain implantations appeared in the center's preliminary proposal, West replied that this was a quote unquote early paper which reviewed the literature for the purpose of people in Sacramento who weren't familiar with it. A great deal had been taken out of context and widely misinterpreted. You know what that sounds like to me? Sounds a little bit gaslighty, and I know that that word is very overused. Sounds dismissive. Sounds like maybe you think that your audience is stupid. But maybe I'm wrong. And this is also from this article. I understand if this picture at the bottom makes you angry. It made me angry. I'm not going to sit here and pick this apart, okay? It is what it is. Stop sharing this. Now, am I being petty? I don't really know. You know, on my last stream, I talked about how do we throw the baby out with the bathwater? And I'm well aware that I am a random person in a cabin in the woods who likes to read and really cares about victims, especially children. And I have a deep interest in bringing forward the truth about the False Memory Syndrome Foundation and all of its board members, all of the proponents of it. And so when I discussed throwing out the baby with the bathwater, I wasn't expecting this individual to, acknowledge me. I thought it was weird. They were kind of running the circuit about how great Jolly was less than 24 hours after I was on a much bigger channel with a platform. And every single day since when I stream, it's another thing about how Jolly absolutely did not do any sort of mind control with Charles Manson. And there must be proof. And this notion is preposterous, unacceptable. That speculating about it is concerning. Concerning, a direct quote. I'm more concerned with an individual who demands evidence, but claims to be an expert in cult recovery. So you know that things are hidden from people. I'm not going to make this into a political thing, but let's be real, guys. How long did they keep Operation Paperclip classified? Richard Helms ordered Sidney Gottlieb to destroy all of the MKUltra documents that were left over. We know that Sidney Gottlieb used different names. SG. I don't even remember the names because he had a couple of them. But you knew that it was Sidney. You knew that it was Gottlieb. Why was Jolly's name so heavily redacted? You guys can watch my other stream, which eventually I'll upload these all onto YouTube, and you guys can look at them there. But I showed the letter from Jolly, and over here, the MKUltra sub-project at his hospital. The researcher's name is the only one that's whited out, and Sidney Gottlieb's name is at the bottom of that document. And it's in regards to funding. Remember the Geschichter Institute? Okay. Nobody gets to demand evidence from the CIA from the time of MKUltra. I'm sorry. No one's an authority on that. They're still not honest with us about everything from Paperclip. And again, do we throw the baby out with the bathwater? This is a moment for everybody to think critically. And part of thinking critically is realizing that sometimes there's a massive question with so many ethical, moral, social implications that it can't be answered easily, and maybe you don't get to an answer. But you can have conversations with people, you can learn from one another, and people can grow. Because it's helpful when we understand our history. I truly believe that. I'm not going to sit here and go on a rant about Nazis, even though some of you know that I really could. So there is one other article that I wanted to read from, because I think that this is very important. This article, I'm just going to scroll through it. I'm going to share the screen, but I want to find it. There we go. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I told you I'm going to get good at this. And okay. All right, here we go. Let me scroll back up here. The first thing I'm going to get good at is being at the top of the screen that I want to share with you guys. So I'm not sitting here rolling through it. Okay, I'm ready. Here we go. And bam. Come on. Come on. There we go. Okay. So you can see this is from September 6, 1991. Dr. L. Jolly and West, the LSD cult behind the Cult Awareness Network. Now, I'm not going to go into the Cult Awareness Network today, okay? I'm really not interested in focusing on all of the Scientology stuff. I'm just going to do little tidbits here and there. specifically refuting some of the claims that have been made about the late, great Jolly West. Now, where are we? I keep scrolling down. Over here on the left, you can see group manipulation, the Tavistock Institute. If you haven't heard of Tavistock, feel free to let me know. I would love to go into Jolly and Tavistock. That would be very fun, specifically for this individual, but I digress. Okay, so over here, these are the studies of violence, specifically that center at UCLA that caused so much heat in Dr. Jolly's kitchen. So, West described the program as an attempt to predict the probability of occurrences of violent behavior among specific groups. The group described by West as most prone to violence was young, Black urban males. The purpose of his proposed violence center was to use the quote-unquote treatment models developed in California prison facilities during the CIA's brainwashing research programs of the 1960s and 70s to treat quote-unquote pre-delinquent children before they become a quote-unquote problem to society. Does that sound like a civil rights activist? I wouldn't say so. There was an interesting point that was brought up on one of these interviews, and eventually I think I will compile all of the clips of this individual and some of the things that they have said. But it was brought up about mkultra because it's really just all about Manson. It's all about Manson and if Jolly controlled him or not. Manchurian Candidate, mkultra, whatever. They brought up Whitey Bulger. And I understand that there are movies out there about Whitey, and some people know that he was a victim of mkultra and some people don't. If you really look into Whitey Bulger, and no, I'm not going to sit here and do a whole presentation on it. Everyone else has access to the same information as me. I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just making a point because it was brought up on this other show. Whitey Bulger gives details in multiple interviews about how he was dosed for months at a time. They would bring cameras in, they would ask them terrible questions, and he would see literal blood running down the walls. He said a camera turned into a dog's head right in front of him. They would keep these prisoners up for days, weeks, and he said specifically that they would take the people who were on the edge, probably maybe heart attack induced stress, stroke induced stress. We don't know because they just took them outside of the prison and buried them. And he did say that predominantly a lot of them were Black incarcerated men. Okay. I don't like the whole picking and choosing what points you think are relevant. And I guess maybe I'm kind of doing that right now, but I'm refuting the dismissiveness of what happened to Whitey Bulger. Because he talks about them literally drugging inmates with LSD and just messing with them, being incredibly cruel, asking them horrible questions, and seeing how far they could push them to the brink of insanity. But hey, man, let's just focus on Manson and question the credibility of the author who worked really hard and was very upfront about how hard they worked. And let's question his speculation. I'm not quoting this person specifically, so I don't want anybody coming at me saying that I am. If anybody's been watching those interviews, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And, well, I guess I'll just go ahead and kind of get to the point, because I'm not going to sit here and ramble on for an hour, because that's all I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to give a little bit of context about brain warfare, because it has been presented that Dr. Louis Joyland Jolly West got into mind control, brainwashing, torture, hypnosis, things of that nature. He was out there blowing the whistle. He was letting everybody know that this was legitimate and the scientific community needed to listen. I would ask you, is it worth speculation or consideration that Mr. Alan Dulles, in April of 1953, made his statement where he termed brain warfare? And then the following year, Dr. Jolly West is appointed as the head psychiatrist of the University of Oklahoma. I don't know. Maybe it's a reach. Or maybe we look through the trends that happen over time, especially in American history. Yeah? Because I think if we do that with a really honest eye and we take our feelings out of it and we just look at it, I would say that that's very interesting timing. But the reason why I am going to do many, many, many more episodes, and eventually we'll get to the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, we'll get to the board members, is because this individual has stated himself that his apparently very well-known book, and I'm not saying that it's not, I haven't read it, that Dr. Jolly West was the one who wrote a letter of recommendation for him. Now, he can't understand why. I feel like he's being a little coy, quite frankly, because he demands evidence for everything else. And that he was at risk of losing said book. And Margaret Singer, the woman who started all of this with that comment, she helped save his book from going bankrupt. So that's 2 False Memory Syndrome Foundation board members. Am I saying anyone's guilty? Am I assuming motive? No. But I am going to call into question the lack of transparency. Because it's only when I brought up Jolly and the False Memory Syndrome Foundation and Margaret Singer, specifically on a ex-Scientology channel, that all of a sudden we got this little Scientology PR campaign about Dr. Jolly West. Well, I'm here to tell you that I care about children and what happens to them and what has happened to them. And I'm going to eventually make the argument that the False Memory Syndrome Foundation was, besides the past couple of years, one of the greatest medical crimes, especially against children. And it's not okay. I'm not going to play these games. I'm sorry. I'm not. And I know that there are fantastic authors and researchers out there who have done bang up jobs about Dr. Jolly West. And any of those sources that I decide to use, I'm going to add them for you guys, but I'm not going to sit here and make like a live document or anything. This is me going over this. And I guess we'll see if I wake up tomorrow with another podcast or a Substack about the late, great Jolly West. Because I don't think that you can talk about him being a civil rights activist with Martin Luther King if you're not going to talk about what he wanted to do to young Black kids. Okay? Thank you. I really appreciate it, guys. And I'll see you next time.